Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you a dark, eerie, and shadowy episode today. Today's episode is a very special one. The very first podcast I was ever on was the Shadow Nation podcast. This was many years ago, but it still feels like yesterday. Shaun Burris is our guest today, the king of Shadow Nation. Shaun Burris is producer, co-host of award-winning Shadow Nation podcast, also star and co-host of A&E's Extreme Para. Shadow Nation podcast is a blast, and Shaun delves into some pretty cool stuff, much of which we are going to try to discuss today. Shaun gets the very best guests in the business, whether that's researchers, Hollywood, or experiencers. Secretly, I'm super jealous of the lineup any given month or two. Truly great stuff. A few of Shadow Nation's podcasts that have stuck in my mind over the years are the Dybbuk Bach episode, a few of the Halloween episodes, the Exorcist podcast, and that's just to name a few. The master podcaster, magician of his craft, tackling ghosts and demons one episode at a time, Shaun Burris. Welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Abracadabra, brother. What a good intro. I'm not sure I deserve it, but I'll take it.
You totally deserve it. Oh my gosh, you totally deserve it. I was thinking back, I don't know how many years it's been. It was about the Uinta Basin High Strangeness, and I remember us talking, and it was a pretty fun time. Since then, I've kind of secretly been hiding in the recesses and listening to all your podcasts, and it's pretty good stuff. I was hoping we could discuss a few of them.
Absolutely, Ryan. We go way back, brother. If you remember, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, maybe further, that I first had you on the Shadow Nation. It was way back when it was called the Ghost Man and Demon Hunter Show. And we had you on. I was always been fascinated by Skinwalker Ranch, and you came out with the book Skinwalker and Beyond. I was fascinated. I read it. What an amazing author you are. And I had you on the show, and you've been a fan favorite ever since for all our up-to-date Men in Black behind-the-scenes stuff. So it's always worked out. It always crashes the servers when you come on. So definitely a partnership made in heaven.
Oh, I know I don't deserve that, but it's so true that it's like a lot of the same topics that you discuss in your podcast are things that I'm just totally into.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's been such a long ride. I've been on the air 14 years now with the Shadow Nation. It's been 14 years. I'm doing my own solo episodes now. So each week we have a guest. It's been a while. I've been revamping the system, getting everything ready for the new year, which had some things come up, so it's getting pushed back a little bit more. But rest assured, we'll be back with all new Hollywood horror stars and the best in the field of the paranormal. And I can't stay away, man. It's like a drug addiction. You got to have it. And just being here talking with you gets me going again. I love being in front. This is my sanctuary, in front of the microphone, talking to you. This is it. This is my sanctuary.
Yeah, man. And you know what? You're so good at what you do, and you're a great guy. And the episodes, my gosh, some of your Halloween episodes from the past, I was going through them past October, and they are just epic. I just have to bring up the Dybbuk box.
Oh, yeah. You know, Ryan, that's funny. Until the Dybbuk box, I never knew that the paranormal could affect us. I mean, I had heard stories, but I never knew that the paranormal could affect us through airwaves, through electronics. I never felt the impact of that. I had heard the stories, yada, yada, yada. People say, yeah, man, the phone interferes with us, and, you know, things have even happened to me. But I got a hold of, I was watching, you know, the Dybbuk box. I mean, you had heard about that. If you're American, you'd heard about it. And if you're into this occult stuff and everything, it had been talked about on Unsolved Mysteries, the Haunting series, and stuff like that. And it was America's most haunted and cursed artifact, or it is, supposedly. And, well, I'd say supposedly, but it definitely is. I tracked down the owner, which was hard as heck, to get him on the show. I finally got a hold of him, and I had him come on. And in the green room, right before the show, he was talking to me, and I'm having him, you know, going over, you know how it is with the podcast. You go over some of the questions, and you talk about what's going to come up on the show and what's slated for the segment. So I was going over that with him, and he kept saying, now, I got to tell you, I've been on several shows where things happen. I bring the Dybbuk box and things happen, especially with electronics. So, you know, he said, get ready. You have a backup computer. Do you have it? Yeah. We got it, man. It's all good. We'll be fine. You know, I'd done tests on the sound. It was doing terrific. And I would say within 20 minutes, we went from a perfect sounding show to just chaos. I mean, it collapsed, man. Static on the air. Only when he would respond to questions that I was asking him about the Dybbuk box. Ryan, I could ask him about how's the weather where you're at, and it would be crystal clear. And then I brought up a question about the Holocaust and the link between that and the Dybbuk box, the history of it. And when he went to respond, it was nothing but static, 100%. Then the moment he said his last word, it would be crystal clear again. And that was just to start the night. So I never really knew that this stuff, podcasting's deadly, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's very real. It's very, very real. And you had some very real consequences. You tracked down the owner of the Dybbuk box. You delved deeply, my man. And I'm super glad that you brought up the ghost in the machine type paranormal activity, because you got hit pretty hard at home.
Yes, I did, and the static on the air was just the tip of the iceberg, man. By the time we went to our first break, because at that time I was doing shows with Nathan Schoonover, that was my co-host, and we went to break. We're scrambling to try to fix this, switching channels, everything else, and it's clear. We tried to do commercial breaks for a while, so we would have a bumper to go to something if, you know, something happened during the show to go away from. So we were doing that, trying to fix it. There was no problem. Everything was clear when we were on pause, and we were waiting for the commercial to play. And then right after that, we come back on, everything's fine. I start asking Jason Haxton, which was the owner of the Dybbuk box. So Jason, you know, you're in the medical field, you're a curator at a medical museum in Missouri. How did you come by the Dybbuk box? How did you stumble upon it? And he'll start answering, and as soon as he did, the chaos ensued again, man. It was crazy. You couldn't hear anything. And then in the second hour of the show, I start hearing a knock. Now, downstairs in the studio, it used to be at this old building that we used, and there was two rooms, two studios side by side. The studio next to ours always sat empty. There was nothing in it. Nobody had rented the space. It always sat empty. And we started hearing a knocking on the wall behind us. Nothing big, just sounded like, but there was nobody else in the building. So it was like a little peck, and then it became a full-fledged somebody knocking on the wall with their fist. So we went to another commercial break. I got up and went and checked the room. When I opened the door, nothing. Shadows. There was nothing in there. Now, that's a huge problem. You know, if somebody's banging on the door and you're broadcasting, how are you supposed to? And you can even hear that. If you go back and you listen to the archives, you can hear the banging coming from the other room while I'm interviewing this cat. And that was just the beginning. After that, I was going upstairs. I seen a shadow pass me on the stairs. It wasn't like some big, ghost guy pushed me down the stairs. I just seen a shadow pass me in the hall. I rubbed my eyes and said, maybe too much podcasting for the night. But we ended up having to end that interview. And he apologized, said, you know what, Shaun, I'm sorry. I told you this kind of stuff happens. And I said, that's okay, Jason. We'll get you back on, whatever. Well, while I'm doing this, Nathan, the co-host at the time, was telling me, bro, I got to go. He's sending me messages. I got to go. I got to get off the air. So I went ahead and I wrapped it up. Well, afterwards, I'm talking to Nathan, and he pulls up his shirt, and he has black and blue marks that just formed all over his back, like in the size of little fists that have been punched him all over his back. He must have had 8 of them. Now, these things just appeared, Ryan, during the show. And that's when it all went to hell. I told him right away, I said, hey, Nate, take pictures of it. Let's not say it's paranormal. I mean, at that time, I thought maybe he had a reaction to a laundry detergent or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I told him to take pictures of it. Let's post it on the website and let the fans decide what they want to decide. So about a day and a half passed, and all of a sudden in the mail, I come home from work, and at my home, I get the book, The Dybbuk Box, that Jason Haxton, the author, had sent me. And I open it up. I came in, I laid my stuff down from work, and I sat down in my recliner, and I opened it up. And inside the book, it says, Shaun, sorry for the interference. I told you. I would love to come back on the show. What a great show it is. No sooner than I put that book down, the loudest boom I've ever heard. I mean, it shook the roof. It shook the windows. It shook my feet. It just echoed through the house. All the lights went off, everything. Now, this is a clear night, Brian. There's not a sound outside. There's not a thundercloud. There's nothing. And I had just got home. It's a summer night. So I go outside. I look around, my wife and my daughter are in bed, and I notice everyone's lights are on but mine. My house is the only house that has the lights off in it. So I come back in, my wife's standing there, and she's like, what's going on? And I told her, I said, honey, I don't know. I'm going to call Power and Light and see what's going on. So I called the power company. They said, sir, we've had no problems. Report it in the area, but we'll look into it. So I go back, and I go downstairs, and I notice the fuse box has those little burnt marks beside the circuit switches.
Yep.
I noticed those are on the box. So I went ahead and I flipped the circuit breakers, and a few of the lights come back on. All the lights except for in the basement come back on. So I go back upstairs, and I'm waiting on the Power and Light people to come out. My wife and kid goes back to bed, and I start smelling the worst odor of gas. I mean, it was overwhelming. My eyes start watering. Just out of nowhere, it comes through the house and hit me right in the face where I couldn't breathe. I'm not talking about a little hint of gas. I'm talking like I'm standing in front of the gas line, and it's pumping in my face kind of thing. That's what it smelled like. So I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So I run, instead of getting my family, I run out front and I call the gas company. I said, we got a problem here, man. I'm smelling gas in my house, and I didn't have a pilot light. It was electronic light on the water heater. So it wasn't like the pilot light just burned out and you're smelling gas. This had to be some kind of internal, failure. So I'm figuring it's that. So I go upstairs, I get the family, and I say, come on, let's go stand on the porch. So me and my wife and my kid are standing on the porch for 45 minutes. Finally, the gas company shows up. The guy takes his meter. It takes about 10 seconds for him to say, get your family out now. So we grab everything we can. I go to get in my car, and I turn the key. And as I turn the key to the car, the dome light comes on, and it goes, ooh, and goes right back out. What a perfect time for a dead battery, I'm thinking. This is great. So we all pack up into my wife's car. We end up going to a hotel room for the night. So the next day, we get up, we go home. The entire street in front of my house is dug up, all the way leading into the basement. The gas company met me out there. The guy said, "You people are so lucky, you should have been dead." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The gas line in the street cracked in such a way that every house on this block should have filled with gas and been dangerously close to exploding. But for some reason, only your house filled with gas. And the levels were so deadly," he said, "they had to have us leave in the middle of the night like they did." So they dug all that up, they fixed it up, and just as he was leaving, I happened to walk past my car. I noticed, wow, the front quarter panel is all bowed out. It's bent like a giant had grabbed it and just crushed it. There's a big bow in it. I get inside the car, and the seat is melted where it had caught fire. And the middle console where you put your arm, it had blown off, and the underside was burnt to a crisp, and it was in the back seat. A lightning bolt had directly struck my vehicle and only caught fire, which the insurance company had a field day with that. They would not believe that because of the rubber tires, this lightning bolt cracked my car and did the damage that I said, that I showed them through pictures that it did. And it only burnt the car seat and the middle console. Now, I'm the only one that drives that car at the time. It got totaled. I was the only one to drive that car ever. And I almost took that with everything else, that this is a message, that this is for you. If you want to play around with this stuff and you want to call me out, I'm going to do this to you and your family. And that was the first time. One of the first, it was the first time that my family had ever been affected outside of me running around looking for the paranormal and interviewing people. That was the very first time.
Man, and what a time that was. That's like, in the lightning bolt, I can kind of relate to the craziness of I want to get into, we got Nathan Black and Blue marks on his back. I love how you let the fans decide on how to move on. So classic, man. And I know that you're an expert at this stuff, so you've come across some pretty amazing stuff, and you'd know it if you saw it. And it kind of leads me into some of the photographs that you've captured in cemeteries and other haunted places. Could we go into that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I don't know if there's any experts. I know I certainly am not one. I've loved this stuff for so long, Ryan. I grew up in a haunted house, so I never had a chance not to believe in the supernatural, the paranormal. People always ask, how do you believe in it? I never had a chance not to. I grew up with it. There was a ghost of a lady in our house, and we believe it was from the lady that hung herself in the 50s in our home. There was a lady, it was documented, it was in the news. She had hung herself, and you would see this lady in the house. Not just me. My father, my mother, people that would come, my cousins, stay the night. You would see her. She never bothered anybody, never did anything. She had black eyes. I'll never forget. Not like glossy black eyes that were popping out of her head. Just where her eyes were at were black. They were dark. You could never see a pupil or anything like that. And she would just walk around the corner. You would see her, and then she wasn't there anymore. You would hear whispers on the staircase at night or in the middle of the day. I'd be sitting there playing Nintendo. I was probably about 7, and you would just hear these faint whispers from the staircase, and you would walk around there, and there was nothing there. So I lived with a ghost until I was, 14, 15, and then we moved out of that house. But ever since then, it's created a passion. Even when I went to college and everything, it started this hunger, this quest for knowledge into the paranormal to find out what did I experience when I was a kid. So over the years, I've got to go to some amazing places. I've set them up. I've spent the night at places people have said are the gateway to hell. I went to the Sally house where they said that the basement was the doorway to hell, and I had my feet hanging off of it all night. So I didn't get anything there. I did have some white lights that would kind of dance around in one of the rooms. That happened. So there was something in that house, the Sally house in Atchison, Kansas. But I didn't hear the little girl voice That's a great story for your listeners if they ever want to check it out. There was a little girl supposedly haunted that house in Atchison, Kansas, Sally House. That was just one of them. Of course, I think what you're talking about with my pictures was another great one, The Nun. I call it The Nun.
Yeah.
I was at a cemetery in Connecticut. I just went to film a TV pilot for another show that didn't make it. You know how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in New York. We filmed this pilot in Sleepy Hollow. Amazing place.
Oh.
And the next day, I wanted to go see where Ed and Lorraine Warren lives, where they lived at the time. Ed was already dead, but of course the famed demonologist, Ed and Lorraine Warren. This cemetery was right down the street from their house, and we were looking for Ed's grave, Ed Warren. And we knew it was a big black tombstone, but that's all we knew. So this cemetery was huge, and we were driving through it, and I was snapping pictures out the window. Drive a little bit, snap a picture. Drive a little bit, snap a picture. So I snapped a picture with my digital camera. I looked down at it because I thought I seen Ed's grave, big black tombstone. And right there in the picture is a woman with a white gown on, and it looks like she's wearing the habit that nuns would wear. To me, it looks like it anyway. And I look up, there's no one there. So I immediately race out to that spot. I just so happened to have my EMF meter in the back of the car because we just filmed that TV pilot. And I got nothing on the EMF meter. I did some EVP. I got nothing on the EVP. But I felt cold when I was there. I felt like something was there with me. And I don't know. I don't know to this very day. If it was a human dressed as a nun or whatever, she had to be the flying nun because she must have got out of there at record time. I mean, I'm talking about a second difference here. But plain as day, brother, she showed up on camera. I don't know who she was, what she was, but I know there was nobody else in that cemetery when I took that picture. That was one of my greatest, I think, photographs I've ever got of what I believe to be an apparition.
Amazing, man. Absolutely amazing photographed. You mentioned the ghost at your house as a kid had black eyes. And I know that you're a fan of aliens and lore of the like as myself. Have you come across anything strange that's of the extraterrestrial type?
You know, I want to so bad. I remember when I was on vacation, we were in Florida, and I was out at night, and I'm looking over the ocean. You see a lot of, you get a clear view of the cosmos at night, usually over the ocean. And I watched a ball of light move and do course direction changes at an ungodly speed that it couldn't have been a satellite. It couldn't have been a plane. So I think that was probably a UFO. I mean, to me, it was a UFO. It did 3 or 4 course direction changes, and it kind of bobbed and weaved, and then it went straight up, and that was it. And I thought, my God, it happened so fast. I see what you mean, but we're talking about when you see like you see them all the time out where you're at. Mm-hmm. Here in Indiana, I don't get to see them as much because I live close to the city, so the skies are usually so lit up, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I seen this, and at first I thought it was a Japanese lantern, or Chinese lantern.
Sure.
And there's no way. It couldn't have been, but it was that close. And I don't know. I don't know to this day, but I tell you what, that's another thing that drives me nuts. The thing about this field is the more you see, the crazier you become. Am I right?
Yeah.
You want to see more. You got to know what it is. Like with EVP, that's my specialty, electronic voice phenomena. When I get that ghost voice on tape, and I know there was nobody else in the room but me or me and a partner, I got to know, where did it come from? Who was it? How is this working? Sometimes I lay in bed at night thinking about the possibilities of extraterrestrials and ghosts themselves and wonder if they're both the same. Wonder if they're linked. What if we die? We know, because Einstein's theory, we become energy, cannot be created nor destroyed. So when we die, we become one big energy force. What if we're all of the same fiber? I don't know. And somehow it's controlled by extraterrestrials. I don't know. What if we're the extraterrestrials? We just look different. People see us in different form as spirits. It's never ending. Like I said, here we go down Crazy Train Street, because you could go all day with these theories.
I love them. I love the theories. I love the theories you mentioned, and absolutely, there's so much value to theories, and I'm glad you mentioned Ed and Lorraine Warren. Shaun, did you have any contact with the Warrens, or did you ever come in contact with any of the stuff they've mentioned in the past?
I met Ed and Lorraine Warren back in the early 90s, and it was brief. I never got to go work cases with them or anything like that. I did go to a couple places that they had investigated, but no, I never had a close connection with Ed and Lorraine Warren. John Zaff is their grandson, or their nephew. Yeah, their nephew. I have had some contact with John. I did get to go to some places with him. I had some buddies set in on an exorcism that he helped perform. But no, never really. I've always kind of did my own, man. I kind of went rogue. I started out after college. I found out there was groups of people, ghost hunters, that would go out and look for these apparitions and go to people's homes and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be a good idea to join. It didn't take me long to figure out I'm kind of a loner. I like to do things my own way, and I kind of went off on my own. So ever since then, I've really went out with a small group of people. It's me and usually a couple other buddies or something, and we'll go spend the night somewhere. And when I go out and investigate, it's not all serious scientific. Because think about it, when you're investigating the paranormal, when paranormal activity happens, what are people usually doing? They're living their lives. They're playing Xbox. They're making love. They're in the shower. They're just they're not holding the EMF detector walking around the house going, oh, I don't feel nothing here. I don't sense nothing here. So when I go into a place, it's not uncommon for me to put a six-pack on ice and make it a vacation stay for me for the weekend. And that's how I get results.
Amen.
Just by being there. The ghosts they'll come to you. Yeah. If the place is haunted, it'll show itself to you. So, or it won't, one of the two, but there's no reason. I don't set up grids and do every room base readings every 5 minutes and stuff like that. I'm kind of lazy boy investigation, I guess, because I don't even really, I'm more of a experiencer now. I love to experience it. I don't even try to prove it to other people because I know it's real. Mm-hmm. So I remember when I started out, I had to prove it to everybody. This is the truth, guys. It's happening. Here it is. And now I just get everything I can, and I'll play it for you if you want to hear it. And if you believe it, fine. If you don't, more power to you. But I know it's real. So I do it for me nowadays more than anything.
Isn't that the truth? Like that need to have to like prove it to people just melts away. And I wanted to ask you something pretty cool that you had a TV career, and I wanted to ask you about some of the most intense things that you had while you did the show.
Oh, yeah, man. Extreme Paranormal on A&E television. That was my big break. I thought that was one for the grandkids, and it ran, 5 episodes and was canceled.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome, though.
So that was and I've done things since then. Solo, which has been cool, man. I know some of the guys at the production companies down in Santa Monica, and Painless Production is the one that did Extreme Paranormal, and they're the ones that call me back a lot to do, like I just did last year, a thing called Evil Things, which was on the Dybbuk box. That was my last piece of work I did for television. I love TV. I love being on there when they let me tell my story. And with Extreme Paranormal, it was a little different. It was, TV is reactionary. So you have to react to everything. I remember We got a lot of great stuff. We can talk about that in a minute. But when I was on set, the weirdest thing is you got two people carrying cameras around, and you got a director that's there watching everything that happens. And they want to see a reaction, because when you're on TV, I mean, look, if you look at Ghost Adventures, my God, that's the definition of overreacting. And I'm not putting down Zach and his fellas, but I'm just saying that is the definition of, oh my God, because you have to tell the viewer this is a big deal, because they're not there with you. They can't see it. And usually ghost hunting, a lot of the times, it's as boring as watching paint dry. That's why you got to have your friends. You got to have the six-pack on ice, man, because if you don't love being in the historical area or being with the people you're with, you're not going to do this long, because you could go to 100 places, and out of those 100 places, 2 of them could be haunted. Mm-hmm. So, but with Extreme Paranormal, the first episode was Manchac Swamp. So it's the middle of June, hottest time of the year. We're down in Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans, at a place called Manchac Swamp. And it's a swamp. It really was a swamp. They took us down to this gator-infested, snakes curled up everywhere, grasshoppers 6 inches long and black as night. I'd never seen things like this. It was like being in the jungle, brother. And they took us out there, probably, I think, call was at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we would start at 2 a.m. And they took us to the cemetery where during the day the swamp would be up almost covering a good part of the cemetery. And then at night, the water would settle, or the tide would go out or whatever, and you would be able to step foot on the cemetery and walk around a little bit. So this old cemetery was from a town that had long been forgotten. The swamp swallowed it whole years ago, and a bunch of those people that were in the cemetery died from the hurricane. Well, while we were there, it was definitely the first week of filming, maybe the third night. I was excited, nervous. I'm learning my lines. Yes, you have lines in reality TV show. And I'm learning, like, just intro lines, stuff like that. You know, this is Shaun Burris, and tonight we're going in Manchac Swamp, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm standing there in the fog. You can watch it. It starts coming down the waterway there in the swamp. And, I mean, you can see the alligator eyes all around you, big yellow eyeballs just poking out of the water. And they got a guy with a cattle prod that was standing on the edge of the cemetery, and you would hear him zap them every once in a while to get them, because that's a nesting ground. They would come up while we were filming, and they would have to zap them back off the off the territory there, or we'd have been eaten alive, right? Mm-hmm. Or had an alligator problem. Anyway, I'm watching this fog, and we're sitting on this boat, and me, Jason, and a couple of production people, we're just sitting there, and we're drinking some water and hanging out, and we seen what looked like a man walking towards us, and we thought, what in the hell is a dude out in the middle of the swamp, because you could only get to this part of the swamp by boat. And it's creepy as hell out there anyway, and those people live down there on the swamp. Some of them are kind of, you know, a little crazy. So we're kind of watching this guy, and he's walking, and he's wearing, I'll never forget, it looks like he's wearing blue jeans and a white T-shirt. And he kept walking, and then he was gone right in front of us. No sooner that he came out of the fog, the guy was gone. And we were just sitting there with our mouths open going, oh, my God, what'd we just see? And the guy had told us that owned that part of Manchac Swamp, that there was ghosts out there in the swamp, that he would see them on the banks of the swamp almost weekly. It's a different place down there in New Orleans, man. The Rougarou, the werewolf, these people believe in this stuff, and rightful so. They believe in voodoo. They believe in ghosts and werewolves, and you name it, man. And I'll tell you what, I was a believer after I left that place. That was one of them. Mm-hmm. And then after we got done there, they took us to a place called the New Mexico State Penitentiary. One of the most haunted places I think I've ever been to in my entire life. And that was the second episode of Extreme Paranormal. And at this prison. It's where they, here you go, Ryan. This prison is where they filmed The Longest Yard with Adam Sandler. You seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that prison that he was at, it was the worst prison riot in American history. Happened back in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s. I mean, just disgusting. It was one rival gang against another. People's intestines were pulled out. They were hung by them from the walls. The blood's still in some of the places. You can still see the blood marks. And up in the cell blocks on the top floor, there's even, on the floor, it looks like an outline of somebody in a fetal position. Well, that was from a guy being burnt alive. His oil and his skin had seared into the cement, leaving that him in that position, that fetal position on the floor, because they pulled, he was the snitch. He snitched on a rival gang about a murder that happened. That's what started the riots. And they pulled this cat out and they burned him alive. And his grease from his body still has his imprint there today.
Oh my
so
gosh.
we took some lighter fluid and we outlined the fetal position of the deceased inmate. And Nathan did like a ritual thing to try to get the dead going. While he was doing that, in the farthest part of the cell blocks, nobody was down there. There was only 4 of us in this entire prison. We heard the door slam, one of the cell doors slam, and you know what that sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you've been in prison, but you know what a big door sounds like, slamming. So that slammed, and you heard a man's voice just scream. What? It just started low, and it picked up. And, I mean, all of us, man, the hair just shot up on the back of your neck. Your skin's ice cold. We even had to get 2 more camera people because we had 2 of them quit and refused to go back on set after that happened that night. I went to the restroom. They had there was no power in there, so they had lanterns all through the prison, and I had to go to the restroom. This was later on through the night. So I walked down the cell block, and I would get lost every 5 minutes around that place because it was crazy. It was like catacombs.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the bathroom. I had the stall door shut, and I heard footsteps, and I heard the door open to the bathroom, and I heard the water come on. So I was playing around going, what are you doing? Who's in here? Laughing and cutting up and everything else. Well, I heard the door open again, and I had just walked out of the stall, and I went down the hall. There was nobody there. Nobody. There's no way nobody could have been there. They would have had to take off running because it's a straight corridor there. There's nowhere to cut or turn. And you know the prison corridors, man, they last forever. So the man screaming, the shadows at Manchac Swamp, all those 3 things were really amazing things that we had happen. I was at Pennhurst State School and Asylum in Philadelphia. And we were walking up to this outbuilding, and they used to beat and abuse these kids there. It was a hospital for the epileptic and the clinically insane. Yeah, how do those 2 go together, right? But it was it. They had a child wing, a woman's wing, and a men's wing. And we were in the children's wing of this hospital, and right before we walked in, I seen, and so did 3 other people with me, a man standing on the 2nd floor. They had a sheriff debrief us before we started filming that night, and the sheriff said, watch out because there's a lot of homeless people, and we can't get them all out all the time, and you just never know. So be careful, going around corners and stuff, what you might run into. Just be cool and call us if you need us. So we're getting ready to walk into this place, and I tell them, you see that man standing up there? And they look up and they say, yep, we better call the sheriff. So they called the sheriff. We went inside. Guess what? There is no 2nd floor. The floor was collapsed. There was no way nobody could have been standing up there. There was no floor.
What?
So I thought that was one of the amazing things. My tales from the road, man, from filming the TV show. But that stuff happens when you're on the set. Usually you don't catch it with camera, though, because the camera's not rolling. Mm-hmm. That was when I seen that guy. They told me, they said, okay, they seen it and they go, well, we're going to start rolling now because we weren't filming. We were just walking up to the place. They go, we're going to start rolling.
Yeah.
So I had to replay how I acted when I seen the guy for the first time. So I was like, oh my God, did you guys see the dude up there in the window or whatever? And that's TV magic. That's how they got to do that, because you're not going to catch everything on tape. But it was cool. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was kind of hard losing it though, because I thought, here we go. I thought we did well. I thought we could compete with Ghost Adventures and all that. We were the first one. I was the first one to do an underwater ghost investigation, where I actually dove to the bottom of Lake Ruidoso, looking for the ghost of Martin Nelson. And I thought it was a good show, but they said we were too extreme and they canceled us.
Wow. And that's the way it is. Hollywood's that way and TV is that way. And man, it's so true. I'm glad that you mentioned how it really is, because I've had those situations too, where at least, in your case, they said, hey, let's reenact it. And in my case, like, we were done filming. I can't mention what it was, but we were done filming and we're all just sitting there, kind of like you said, hanging out, having a beer and a taco, I think. And all of a sudden, the craziest light you've ever seen is in the, back by a ridge. And anyway, there's nothing you can do. It's like, okay, well, that was a wrap. We're done. But what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. There's nothing you can do. Yeah, you're always out there. See, I love these stories about it. You love the stories I got. I love your stories, man. So we should interview each other all day long, just back and forth. Say, we could go on for hours.
We could.
But they out where you're at, out where the studios is and your home and everything, you're right there. You now have your own little piece of God's country. You have your own little ranch out there, right?
Oh, it's just a little something where I can, park legally and not get chased off. But yeah, it's a nice place to kind of unwind and do whatever. But getting back to your research style, Shaun, I got to ask, whether it's diving to the bottom of a lake or gator-infested swamps at 2 a.m. or a historic haunted building, with your experience in oddness and high strangeness, what are your thoughts on the recent Utah monolith, 2020 in general, and this darn virus?
Yeah, well, my God. First off, 2020, what is it good for? You know what I mean? We don't need it, man. We got to get done with this year. It's killing us. I've had the worst luck this year. It's just been like a bad dream, man. And, the monolith, when I seen that, I kind of got excited because that's up our alley. I thought, oh, no, this is cool, man. Straight out of Space Odyssey, right?
Yeah.
The movie. But I have no idea. Then they had some people come forward who's been doing it, but there's no way they could have gotten them to the places that they had been got. It's like our modern day crop circles. Is it real? Is someone staging these? And why would they go through the trouble of making these things and placing them out there? I don't know. If you want to look at it from a side of extraterrestrial or alien kind of science, maybe it's a sign. I mean, this has been a crazy year. It's been a good year for ufology. You can't say that it hasn't been, because with the U.S. military admitting the existence of UFOs, it's been groundbreaking. And now this stuff happening. It's I don't know. What do you think it is? I'm kind of at a loss for it. I have no idea.
I'm with you, my man. I don't think that I'm just going to say it, my opinion. I'm just going to say it. I don't think that the people that are claiming, trying to sell these things for $45,000 a pop, I don't think that that's necessarily the way somebody who has hidden something for at least 6 years that we know of would react to something like this. And I think, I watched a very good analysis on the YouTube channel was Jailbreak Overland. And the gentleman goes out there and he's like an overlander, hardcore guy, 4-by-in. He can't find the thing. Andy has a drone and he's like, it's not as easy to find as people are saying. Well, by the next day, it's gone. And his Moab buddies who have been to the location and tested it, they found that it was super true, after 5-6 years that we know of, barely being into the sandstone with just epoxy, it was still totally true. And the placement was strange in the amphitheater. So, like, if you were within a foot or two of this thing, your voice sounded like you were on a PA system. And if you were, and if you were away from it, like, they could barely hear you. And then the other odd thing is kind of like, it was sort of like a triangle, right? And the triangle aligned perfectly with a waterfall that came into the amphitheater. So the belief is that this would split the water as it came in, so it would go around you, and then your voice would be magnified, and it would just be like this surreal experience if it was used in an occult way. But nobody's, who knows? We may never know.
So like a communication device, possibly, if that's it, but nobody knows how to use it.
Yeah.
If the aliens are dropping these little gems here on Earth, I wish they would give some instruction with them, because we need it. I mean, my God, it is as far, how dumb I sound. I'm like, well, it's Space Odyssey, and it's kind of like From the Land of the Lost. Do you believe in life after love? Remember, he's put his hand on that, oh God, what was the monsters? What was the reptiles' names? The sleepbacks.
They're so cool.
Yeah, they had the crystals and everything, and they would talk into them. That's what it reminded me of. And the first thing that comes to mind, if it's a real deal communication device, some way, is this a modern day communication type of thing that we just don't know how to use? And why would aliens drop technology that they know we can't use? Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. It's strange.
And it is. I think it's probably man-made, and I'm actually 100% sure I think it's man-made. And the weird thing is, though, why would somebody go to all that expense? And it really is like, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think somebody did something with this 6 years or later, and they had a riot or a blast doing whatever they did. And since then, it's hush-hush. But that's just my personal opinion. But I don't know, man. I have to ask you something that you mentioned that I have not heard for a long time, so I have to do it. You mentioned the Rougarou and Voodoo. Have you come across anything with the Rougarou or Voodoo?
Unfortunately, I have yet to see a werewolf. I think what they see down there is not a werewolf, but I think it's actually the French explanation of Bigfoot, because you hear that story down there too, but not as much as the Rougarou. But we all know down in the swamps, Boggy Creek, stuff like that, you've always heard the legends of the Bigfoot that are down there. But down in Louisiana, down in that part of Manchac Swamp, you just never hear about the Bigfoot. You always hear about the Wolfman, but it's the same thing. It leaves prints. It leaves hair on trees. It snaps the trees. It throws rocks, things like that. So it sounds very similar to what the Bigfoot researchers, when they go out, what they look for. And I tell you what, the man that he was a Frenchman, and, he was Cajun, I guess, right? They're all kind of little French down there in the swamps. Mm-hmm. And he swore by it, Ryan. He swears that he had seen the Rougarou monthly, that it walks the swamp up and down, back and forth. He even had trail cameras out there to catch things, and he had pictures of shadows and, the stuff like that. But I think that's what it is. I think it's a Bigfoot. I don't know. I'm not saying that lycanthrope can't exist or whatever. Maybe that there's a possibility something like that is a cryptoid type thing. But that's what I think it is. I think it's Bigfoot.
Yeah, man, because this stuff happens. I was just, there's a gentleman in the Four Corners area, And he swears, like you said, that these lichens is what he calls them. But yeah, I think werewolf or skinwalker and shapeshifter. Right. But he says that these things have like infested one side of his property, and that on the other side of the property, he has these more Sasquatchy things, and that they actually get into it occasionally. And I mean, it's just so hard to believe, but there's got to be something to it because well, anyway, let's get back to another quick question before we kind of wrap it up, since we're getting there. How about voodoo? Did you ever come across any voodoo strange belongings or artifacts?
You know, down here, when we went to Manchac Swamp, they took us to this old part of town, and we were supposed to meet a lady named Priestess Miriam, and she is the direct descendant of the voodoo queen, Marie Laveau. And we walked into this old house, and it had a shop that sold artifacts and stuff like that out front. And in the back, it was this little room when we went in, and it was burning hot. And she was sitting there in full headdress, almost like Native American wear. And there were statues of the Pope with the face painted black and money rolled up and like shoved in his hand. There was voodoo statues that you would see like in the movies and stuff like that you would think of. A lot of, because that's what it is. It's Haitian Catholicism, if you will. And I learned a lot about it while I was there. And we had a chance to interview the priestess. And they got to a point where they wanted to get a clip of her saying, yes, ghosts can kill you, right? For the production value. Dun, dun, dun. So she would not say that. She would not say a ghost can kill you because she kept saying, if you're protected, you believe in God, this and this and that, they cannot harm you in that way. But what she did say is they can cause you to harm yourself through fear, through possession, through things of that nature. So, of course, they got her all the way down to her going through that explanation, and then finally she said, if all that happens, yes, a ghost can kill you. So they took that last little part, yes, a ghost can kill you, and they used that during the episode. The only time that I was down there that I came into close contact was she was doing a ceremony. Papa Lugba and Mama Buzu is two of the deities that they pray to. Mm-hmm. And we were out in the middle of the swamp, and if you go back and you watch it on YouTube, guys, or whatever, Extreme Paranormal, you'll see that they made us this. Nathan would always be the occult guy. He would do these seances or rituals or whatever, and we would rush in and try to find out. The whole basis of the show was show me. If Satan is in the other room and knocking on this piece of wood 3 times makes him appear, why not knock on the wood 3 times? This is what we're here for. Because a lot of the ghost shows are like, oh, don't say that name. Or don't do it. Why? That's why you're here. To make this stuff happen. If they always say, don't say that devil's name, don't say that demon's name, but that's why you're there, to say the name and see what happens. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is a risky field we're in, and sometimes you have to go for the gold, man, and just hope you said your prayers, I guess. But it's a dangerous field. But we were down there in the swamp. We're doing this ritual, and Nathan's he barely knows what he's doing. They had kind of rehearsed it with him, and he had done his studies, but he's not a voodoo practitioner. But for the episode, he was doing this ritual. So I'm sitting there listening, and he's smoking his cigar and blowing the smoke, and he's got his rum out making this offering. And me and Jason, the other guy that was on the show with me, we're sitting there in this circle watching him, waiting on something to happen. And all of a sudden, our ears popped, like a pressure had changed in the atmosphere. Like, you know how when the pressure changes, your ears will pop, right? Mm-hmm. So my ears popped, and no sooner than they popped, Nathan's eyes roll back white. And I'm talking roll back white to where you can't see pupil at all. You can't see anything. His eyes are totally white, like in a horror movie. And I think, my God, if he's faking this, he's doing a great job, right? So, and we didn't fake anything on the show. People like to say, you know, that the show, we faked stuff and everything else. That was all bullshit. That never happened, not once. I wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So his eyes rolled back, and he was speaking like a garbled whatever. He would say a word of the ritual he was doing, and then he would just, and then he collapsed. And I know he wasn't pretending, because he collapsed face first into an anthill of red ants in the middle of the swamp. So he was laying on the ground shaking like he was going into seizures, and we grabbed when we figured out what was going on, and they yelled, "Cut," we grabbed both of his arms, took him back to the boat, and started dousing him with cold water, because we figured it must have been 110 degrees out there in the swamp that night. Thought maybe heat stroke or something. But he swears up and down that he became possessed by doing that ritual, and the ritual was to open the gateway to the other side. That's when we lowered one of the castmates into the ground, into a coffin, so he could be in the world of the dead and we could better communicate with him. And I think for that moment, that by Nathan doing that ritual, by not knowing what the hell we were doing, and by going 100% balls to the wall, that we unlocked something that shouldn't have been unlocked by people who didn't know what was going on. That was my first very real experience with voodoo.
Wow, man. So spooky. And, you know, in my opinion, Shaun, nobody really takes the listeners to the creepiness like yourself, my man. I'm a fan for life. And before we get done, where can listeners follow your archive of shows, keep up with your work, and just support all the awesome stuff you've done, do, and will do, YouTube, etc.?
Absolutely, brother. Guys, I am the Ghost Man Shaun Burris, and you can catch all the archives, 14 years plus, at shadownation.com. That's shadownation.com. You can follow us on Instagram. That's shadownat. That's N-A-T, shadownat on Instagram. And Facebook, Shadow Nation Podcast. You can follow us, see what's going on new, see where we're going to be at next and what we got going on. I've been kind of taking a revamp period, getting everything back, but you got 14 years of stuff to listen to catch up before I start new episodes anyway, so that should keep you busy. But shadownation.com is definitely the best place to get everything. You can shoot me an email, tell me what you'd like to hear, or send me any questions you might have. And, of course, you can listen to our buddy Ryan Burns, Skinwalker and Beyond, and so much more, because his episode's up in the archives too, guys. So that's where it's at, Ryan.
So cool, man. And the episodes are so good, you guys. Out of the episodes that hit me the hardest, I mean, I've mentioned some of them just to you personally, but your Halloween episodes, wow. You love Halloween like myself, and my neighbors know that the only season I decorate more than Christmas is Halloween. And I know that you also enjoy a good beer and even go seasonal with some of the Halloween seasonal beers. So good, man.
Absolutely. Hey, you know, you mentioned briefly before about that exorcism, Dr. Richard Gallagher that came on the show. That was a good one, man. That was my latest crazy experience with the crucifix being torn and everything.
If you have a couple extra minutes, can we go into that one?
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, my man. How did it all go down?
Well, it was Dr. Richard Gallagher, and he is the board-certified clinical psychologist for the entire Catholic Church in the United States, which means every exorcist has to be done in the United States. The case file has to be evaluated by this guy. And I thought it was fascinating. I was researching, I finally found this guy, and he's a board-certified psychologist, a big one that had been to Harvard and Yale and in places like this, so he knows his stuff. And he will tell you 100% that demons exist and they're real. And he he just dropped a book. I forget the name of it, Ryan. I'll have to give it to you later. But he just dropped a book, guys, Demonic Foes. That's the name of it, Demonic Foes. It is a damn good book. Your listeners need to check it out. Anyway, I got this gentleman on the show, and you guys can check this episode out. It was just last year, and it's towards the very top in the archives. And he starts talking about the case of Julia. And that's a fake name that he used because he couldn't use her real name. Julia was a young lady that was possessed by demons, and she called a priest out, and the priest called Dr. Gallagher for help. And Dr. Gallagher goes on through this phone call with me, telling me how the priest had called him one night. This case was probably 50 miles away, and he was at home with his wife, Dr. Gallagher, and the priest had called Dr. Gallagher. The priest wasn't even in the girl's house. He wasn't even around the possessed girl. But while they're talking, while they're having this conversation, they start hearing interference on the line. Mm-hmm. And then they hear a voice say, "I said, leave her alone." Like that. And Dr. Gallagher told the priest, "Did you just hear that?" And the priest says, "Yeah, this stuff happens, yada, yada, yada. When we're involved in cases, sometimes you'll get voices on the phone, things of that nature." Dr. Gallagher said, okay. They discussed their business. They hung up the phone. Later that night, Dr. Gallagher has 3 cats. They all got in this huge fight where there was blood. I mean, these cats had been together since kittens. They never fought. And all of a sudden, there's blood flowing. They're scratching each other. They're ripping each other's hairs out and everything else. Well, the next day, Dr. Gallagher gets up. He went to work, and then he was supposed to go see Julia, this possessed lady, to set in on this exorcism. This lady, when he gets there, sits up in bed and asks him if he enjoyed the cats. There's no way that she could have known, he said, that he had owned cats, that he was even coming over that day.
Gives me the chills.
But somehow she did. And right when he gets to that part of the story, you guys can hear it for yourself during the episode that I'm doing with him. You start hearing voices in the background. And I'm not talking about a me. I'm talking about voices whispering, and it starts and it doesn't stop. It goes in and out. I could barely hear it during the interview. I thought maybe it was a TV on in the background on his end. That's how low it was. But when I played it back and I was editing it, you can hear it plain as day. It's a young woman's voice, and she's whispering. The whole time I'm talking to him, I would say a good 10 minutes of the interview, I catch this woman whispering on the interview. Now, similar to the Dybbuk box, when I got off the phone with Dr. Gallagher, I had knocking in the studio, because now my studio is in my home. Mm-hmm. When I was downstairs, I'm watching football, Sunday Night Football. I hear knocking up in the studio. My wife, my daughter in bed. The dog and the cat are in bed with them. I run upstairs. There's nothing in the studio. And while I'm in the studio, I heard a knock downstairs. So I went downstairs. Just like demons are cowards, because they are, they'll do little things like that to kind of get you startled and get the fear going. At least that's what Dr. Gallagher says. So I couldn't find where these knocks were coming from. The next day, I had been off work. I hadn't gotten in my car for 3 days. The next day, I went to get in my car to go to work, and I had a rosary hanging from the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Just the crucifix had been ripped off, and it was thrown in the passenger side seat. Nobody had been in my car for 3 days. And I don't know what to think about that. But that was one of my last experiences doing the podcast. I call it When Podcasts Attack. Mm-hmm. Life and times of a paranormal podcaster, because this stuff is real, and it does affect us, Ryan, in strange ways. And if you're doing this type of stuff, man, it puts us right on the railroad tracks, and the train's coming, baby. I know. So you got to be ready. But your listeners can check that one out, too, at shadownation.com. It's under Dr. Richard Gallagher. You won't miss it. It's like 3 or 4 episodes down, and it says the Demon Exorcist interview or something. But yeah, that was a scary one for me.
Such a scary tale. The part about the cats just gives me the chills, because I've heard that in so many other cases involving exorcisms, demons. And anyway, man, you do it all. Aliens, swamp gators, and diving for ghosts. I can't thank you enough for coming on, Shaun. You're the man, and I hope we chat more often and chat soon.
Anytime, Ryan. Anytime you need me, I'm there. You know that, brother. And thank you to you and your listeners for listening in, man. And I can't wait to come back on sometime.
That would be great. We'll have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we'll talk after that.
All right. Merry Christmas, brother.
Man, oh man. I don't know what I can really say after all that. I am a fan of everything Shaun Burris. Talk about the man. His episodes hit me so hard, his Halloween episodes in particular. And that exorcism episode that he mentioned, please check it out. When I heard that episode, it really took me there. Really amazing, the things that took place with the contact with these demonic entities. And it's a thing that must be listened to if it's something that you are looking into. And I know we're going into a season with a lot of dark things hanging over us. We have a virus behind us. It's been a tough season for a lot of people. And I just, there's light on the other side. And the new year's almost here. So let's do this. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground. But don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off.